Oh, while President Biden calls recent inflation reports political spin, small business owners are gearing up for what could be a very lean holiday shopping season. All of this as the IRS announces some big changes to the tax bracket and a plan to up the standard deduction for 2023. We go now to Joel Griffith, research fellow for economic policy studies at the Heritage Foundation. Joel, good to see you as always. I want to get right to that big announcement from the IRS. Can you tell us what's in it, and also what will it mean for Americans?
Well, over the past year, families have seen a pay cut of around $6,000 a year due to inflation. All this IRS announcement does is say, look, because of the cost of living increases and because of inflation, the tax brackets are going to increase by 7%, meaning if you were earning $100,000, well, you might pay a little less on that $100,000. But here's what it means to the typical middle-class family. If you're a middle-class couple earning $60,000 each per year, you have seen your expenses go up by around $10,000 annually. You've seen a wage hike of only about $5,000. That's a $5,000 reduction in your take-home pay. And guess what? Your taxes are still going to go up in the coming year to the tune of around $700, even with the bracket adjustment.
Yeah, another thing I want to talk about. Yesterday, President Biden announced plans to dip into that strategic petroleum reserve, about 15 million barrels of it. Of course, this is not the first time that the Biden administration has done this, Joel. So that said, what do you think about this move?
Well, the Biden administration is draining our strategic petroleum reserves in order to score some cheap political points in the hopes of reducing gas prices. Let's remember what those reserves are there for. Those reserves are to ensure that if we come under attack or if we have a natural disaster, that we will have oil on hand to ensure that we can ship things like food across the country and to ensure that we can heat our homes during the wintertime and to provide fuel for our vehicles in the event of a natural disaster or an enemy attack. Those reserves were not in place to try to impact prices or to score political points. The bottom line is, even with the reserves being released, we are still seeing gas prices increasing. And that's because we have put a limit on the supply of gas in this company. We have seen this administration declare war on the fossil fuel industry, and we continue to see refineries shut down, and we continue to see this administration try to block pipelines from being constructed. That is why we are seeing the costs of oil and gas go up.
Yeah, and we are certainly all feeling the pain, at the pump, and not just there, also at the grocery store. It seems everything is going up these days, but it also seems that President Biden continues to dig his heels in, essentially saying that Americans have been squeezed by the cost of living for years now. Joel, what's your reaction to that statement?
Well, that statement is factually untrue. In fact, just prior to President Biden taking office, we saw median household income in real terms, inflation adjustment terms, we saw real household income at all-time highs. It's only since President Biden came into office that we've seen these families fall behind. Since the beginning of 2021, when President Biden took office, the typical middle-class family has seen their real income decline by over $6,000 per year. And we're all feeling it. If you go to the grocery store, you're buying some eggs, those eggs are 30 or 40% more than they were a year ago. Costs more to buy a home, to rent a home, to fill up your car, to buy a car. Middle-class families are suffering right now because of the policies put in place by this administration.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, Joel, it seems it's so bad in New England. I read today that some lending institutions in Maine are actually offering people loans just to pay their heating fuel costs. So it is that bad. I want to quickly, we're almost running out of time, but I quickly want to talk about this. We're going to jump across the pond now to the news of departing British Prime Minister Liz Truss. Many say that her economic policies were disastrous. I want to get your thoughts on that. What do you think?
The crisis in the United Kingdom has been building for years, and that's because we have seen their government, like ours, spending far beyond their means. We saw the central bank in the United Kingdom printing hundreds of billions of dollars worth of pounds. And then on top of that, we have seen the United Kingdom political parties pushing forward their version of a Green New Deal, trying to force consumers and businesses to use renewable energy. And with the war between Russia and Ukraine, that has really highlighted just how dangerous it has been to force businesses and families away from using the abundant natural gas supplies that were available. And we've seen that come to a crescendo. It wasn't her fault that England ran into these problems, but she is now bearing the consequences of that.
Well, Joel, so much more we could talk about, but we have to leave it right there. Thank you so much, as always. We appreciate your insights.
Thanks for having me, Tracy.